So you want to play some Pokemon games, right? But you've got nothing. No games, no Game Boys, no consoles, nothing. And you don't want to go out and buy like 7 different consoles, but you do want to play as much Pokemon as you possibly can. Well, if this ridiculously and unrealistically specific scenario happens to describe your particular situation, then good news, because today we're going to find out which console has the most Pokemon games. Well, it kinda depends on how you count them, because if we're just talking mainline games on the console that they were released on, then the Game Boy's got 6, Game Boy Advance has 5, the DS has 9, the 3DS has 8, and the Switch has 6. So, the DS wins. But I reckon we can break it down a little bit better than that, so let's start again. So for the original Game Boy, we've got Pokemon Red, Blue, and Yellow for a total of 3 games. But then you kind of also have Green, but like, we're not going to count Green because it was only ever released in Japan, and if we did, then we kind of have to count Red twice, which we're also not going to do. So let's just leave it at 3. So then for the Game Boy Color, which is a different console, we have Pokemon Gold, Silver, and Crystal for a total of 3 games. But then you can also play Red, Blue, and Yellow on a Game Boy Color, so that kind of brings it up to 6, I guess? I don't know, we'll come back to this one. Now, the Game Boy Advance gave us Pokemon Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald, but we also got remakes of the original Red and Green games with Fire Red and Leaf Green for a total of 5 games. But you can actually play all of the Game Boy and Game Boy Color games on a Game Boy Advance, which puts us up to 11 games. Adding in a second screen, the Nintendo DS gave us Pokemon Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum. But then also remakes of Gold and Silver with Heart Gold and Soul Silver. But also Pokemon Black, Pokemon White, Pokemon Black 2, and Pokemon White 2 for a total of 9 games. But you can play Game Boy Advance games on a DS, which means we've got to add Ruby, Sapphire, Emerald, Fire Red, and Leaf Green for a total of 14 games. A number which may have been a lot higher with full backwards compatibility, but the DS does not play nicely with the old Game Boy and Game Boy Color games, so unfortunately, no Japanese Pokemon Green on your DS. Now, the 3DS gave us Pokemon X, Y, Sun, Moon, Ultra Sun, and Ultra Moon, as well as the remakes of Ruby and Sapphire with Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire for a total of 8 games. But also, the 3DS can play the DS games, which means we have to include Diamond, Pearl, Platinum, Heart Gold, Soul Silver, Black, White, Black 2, and White 2 for a total of 17 different games on one console. Now, ditching the second screen, the Nintendo Switch gave us Pokemon Sword and Shield and Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, but also we got remakes of Diamond and Pearl with Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl for a total of 6 games. And they're not really mainline games, but we did get Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee to bring the total up to 8. And then if I guess we're including those games, then we've also got to include Legends Arceus, which brings that up to 9. And I guess we also got to include new Pokemon Snap, which brings it up to 10. And then I guess if we're including new Pokemon Snap, then we kind of got to include the original one on the Nintendo 64. Which means that we've also got to include Stadium 1 and 2. Probably Hey You Pikachu as well. Which means I think we should start again. Alright, Game Boy stays the same with Red, Blue, and Yellow, which leaves us with 3. You know what, screw it, let's chuck in Green, and that brings us up to 4 games. But the Game Boy Color has Gold, Silver, Crystal, Red, Green, Blue, and Yellow, but also the Pokemon Trading Card Game, Pokemon Pinball, and Pokemon Puzzle Challenge for a total of 10 games. So let's have a quick look at the Nintendo 64, where we get Pokemon Stadium 2, Pokemon Snap, Hey You Pikachu, and Pokemon Puzzle League for a total of 5 games. But with a transfer pack, you can use Pokemon Stadium 1 and 2 to play Red, Green, Blue, Yellow, Gold, Silver, and Crystal, bringing us up to 12 games on a single 64. Which may sound pretty good, but the Game Boy Advance still has Ruby, Sapphire, Emerald, Fire Red, Leaf Green, Gold, Silver, Crystal, Red, Green, Blue, and Yellow. But also Pokemon TCG, Pinball, and Puzzle Challenge. But also Pokemon Pinball, Ruby and Sapphire, and Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, Red Rescue Team, which gives us 17 different games. But that means that the Nintendo DS still gets Diamond, Pearl, Platinum, Heart Gold, Soul Silver, Black, White, Black 2, White 2, Ruby, Sapphire, Emerald, Fire Red, and Leaf Green, as well as Pokemon Pinball and Mystery Dungeon Red Rescue Team, but also Mystery Dungeon Blue Rescue Team, Explorers of Time, Explorers of Darkness, and Explorers of Sky, as well as Pokemon Ranger Shadows of Elmia, and Pokemon Ranger Guardian Sign. But that's not everything, because we also get Pokemon Dash, Pokemon Troze, and Pokemon Conquest. And if we really want to include everything, then we also get Learn with Pokemon Typing Adventure, which gives us 27 games on a single DS. Now, we kind of skipped over the GameCube here because we only really get Colosseum and Gale of Darkness, but if you really want to bump up the numbers for the GameCube, then you could include Pokemon Box, which was pretty much just a storage system like Pokemon Home, and Pokemon Channel, which only barely counts as a game. We're also going to skip over the Wii here because we only really get Battle Revolution and a couple of Poker Park games. You could also include the WiiWare games like Rumble and Ranch, but I'm not going to bother. We're also skipping the Wii U because all we really get is Rumble and Pokken. Now, the Switch has a lot of games, not just Pokemon games. This bad boy can fit so many games in it, but let's go through them real quick. We get Sword, Shield, Scarlet, Violet, as well as Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. Let's Go Pikachu, Let's Go Eevee, Pokemon Legends Arceus, New Pokemon Snap, Mystery Dungeon Rescue Team DX, Pokemon Cafe Mix, Detective Pikachu Returns, Pokken Tournament DX, Pokemon Quest, and Pokemon Unite, which gives us a total of 16 games. Now, if you want to bump the numbers up even more, then we could include the Nintendo Switch Online Expansion Pass, which gives us access to the Nintendo 64 games, which adds in Pokemon Stadium 1 and 2, Pokemon Snap, Pokemon Puzzle League, Pokemon Trading Card Game, and for some reason, Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Red Rescue Team, which is the only Game Boy Advance Pokemon game on the Switch. I don't know, it's weird, but that bumps us all the way up to 22 games, which is still less than the 27 on the DS. But you may have noticed that I did skip over one pretty important console, because I'm trying to build up some suspense here, but the Nintendo 3DS is an interesting one. Because we still have X, Y, Sun, Moon, Ultra Sun, and Ultra Moon, Omega Ruby, Alpha Sapphire, Diamond Pearl, Platinum, Heart Gold, Soul Silver, Black, White, Black 2, and White 2, but also Mystery Dungeon Blue Rescue Team, Explorers of Time, Explorers of Darkness, and Explorers of Sky, Pokemon Ranger Shadows of Elmia, and Guardian Sign, Dash, Troze, Conquest, and Typing Adventure. But now, we also get Mystery Dungeon Gate to Infinity, Super Mystery Dungeon, Rumble Blast, Rumble World, Detective Pikachu, and Pokemon Art Academy, which brings us all the way up to 34 games. But that's not quite everything, because the 3DS eShop gives us Pokemon Dream Radar, Pokemon Shuffle, Pokemon Picross, Pokemon Battle Troze, and Pokédex 3D. But also, the 3DS Virtual Console gives us Red, Blue, Yellow, Gold, Silver, and Crystal, as well as Pokemon Puzzle Challenge and the Trading Card Game, which means a single Nintendo 3DS console gives you access to 47 different Pokemon games, which is pretty cool. That's a lot of games. So now we all know the console with the most Pokemon games is, drumroll please, a PC.